You might think the American passport opens every door, but in 2025, it's starting to slam shut. Across the globe, a surprising number of countries are not only rejecting U.S. travelers, they're deporting them. And the reasons? They'll make your jaw drop. From social media slip-ups to innocent cultural misunderstandings, Americans are being kicked out for things they didn't even know were wrong. It's not just the usual suspects either. Some of the world's most popular vacation spots and longtime allies are suddenly showing Americans the door. Fast. One tourist hotspot will boot you just for filming a beach. Another, once known for its hospitality, is now ejecting U.S. aid workers and digital nomads alike. And you won't believe who's at number 3. It's a place you probably thought was a safe, sunny paradise. So buckle up. Here are 10 countries that are deporting Americans in 2025. This list might just change your next travel plan. While not a country most Americans put at the top of their travel list, Serbia has become increasingly hostile toward U.S. citizens in 2025, particularly those involved in media, activism, or humanitarian work. Fueled by growing anti-Western rhetoric and its complex relationship with NATO and the EU, Serbia has seen a surge in nationalism. Americans perceived as promoting Western values are being labeled as agitators or foreign influencers. Some are even accused of espionage for simply asking the wrong questions or filming politically sensitive areas. In one case, an American vlogger was deported for recording interviews with local protesters. In another, a peace worker was removed after attending a roundtable discussion on Balkan history. The government accused them of spreading misinformation and revoked their visa on the spot. The media landscape is also a minefield. Journalists covering topics like Kosovo, LGBTQ+ rights, or corruption have been detained and deported, often without explanation. Even social media activity is being used to justify expulsions. Serbia may not have the global spotlight, but it's sending a loud message. Foreigners, especially Americans, must not interfere in local affairs. In 2025, that message is enforced with deportation papers and a flight home. India's historic ties with the U.S. remain strong on paper, but on the ground, the story in 2025 is different. Rising nationalism, stricter visa enforcement, and sensitivity around cultural and political topics have led to a rise in deportations of Americans. Many cases involve Americans who engaged in social activism, environmental protests, or commentary on religious or caste issues. An American college student was deported for attending a local protest, despite holding a valid student visa. A freelance writer was removed for articles that were perceived as anti-India. India has also cracked down on unauthorized religious and humanitarian work. American missionaries working without proper documentation or engaging in proselytizing have been swiftly deported. Even those involved in charity work face scrutiny, if it's seen as violating local laws or cultural sensitivities. Tourists have not been spared either. A group of travelers was expelled for filming in rural villages without permission. Others were deported for possessing banned books or for insensitive remarks made online, which were flagged by authorities. With advanced surveillance and data tracking, India is keeping a close watch on digital footprints. Americans posting controversial opinions, even prior to their trip, are finding themselves flagged and sometimes stopped at the border. In 2025, traveling to India as an American means navigating a delicate landscape of respect, legality, and caution. The glittering skyscrapers of Dubai and Abu Dhabi may seem like a futuristic dream for many Americans, but in 2025, that dream can turn into a deportation nightmare if you're not careful. The UAE enforces some of the strictest social and moral laws in the world, and Americans unfamiliar with the rules are increasingly finding themselves kicked out. Public displays of affection, drinking alcohol in non-designated areas, or dressing inappropriately in public places can all lead to arrest. And then, deportation. One American couple was expelled after a beach photo shoot deemed immodest. Another was deported for swearing during a taxi dispute, caught on a surveillance camera. Social media is another minefield. Influencers who post provocative content or criticize the country's legal system have been detained and deported. Even sharing a meme considered blasphemous or culturally inappropriate can trigger legal action. The UAE is also tightening regulations on foreign workers. Remote workers and freelancers without proper licensing are being fined and expelled. And those involved in activism, even online, are considered persona non grata. The UAE offers glamour and opportunity, but it comes with strings attached. For Americans in 2025, even one misstep, whether on Instagram or in real life, can cost you your place in this desert paradise. Mexico may share a border and countless ties with the U.S., but that hasn't stopped a rise in deportations of Americans in 2025. Long a destination for retirees, remote workers, and spring breakers, Mexico is tightening its grip, especially as tensions flare over migration policies and cultural clashes. A wave of gentrification in Mexican cities has led to resentment among locals, who blame wealthy American expats for rising rents and pushing out traditional businesses. Public pressure has prompted the Mexican government to crack down on Americans working or living illegally, especially digital nomads without proper visas. Immigration authorities have conducted surprise checks at Airbnb rentals and co-working spaces. Americans who can't show valid paperwork or those caught working under tourist visas are being deported immediately. Social media influencers, often flaunting luxury lifestyles, have been singled out for economic exploitation of local communities. Even travelers on short trips aren't safe. Tourists behaving disrespectfully at cultural sites, engaging in drunken misconduct or violating environmental laws, have been deported after just one incident. Mexico's authorities are increasingly taking these cases seriously to protect tourism and preserve public order. While Mexico remains a top U.S. travel destination, Americans in 2025 must now navigate it with caution and respect. What once felt like an easy getaway now comes with real consequences for crossing legal or cultural boundaries. This one comes as a surprise to many. The Philippines, a longtime ally of the United States and home to millions of Filipinos with ties to America, is now clamping down on U.S. citizens. While the relationship between the two countries remains officially cordial, recent political shifts and nationalist rhetoric are changing the tone on the ground. In 2025, several Americans have been deported under allegations of meddling in domestic affairs, often tied to social media activity or participation in local community organizing. One case involved an American teacher removed for criticizing educational reforms on Twitter. Another was a missionary deported for preaching in areas without proper religious permits. Cultural insensitivity is another flashpoint. The Philippines, deeply rooted in its traditions and values, expects foreign visitors to show respect. Americans displaying arrogance, making offensive jokes about local culture, or filming street life without permission have faced backlash, and in some cases, legal consequences. The government has even launched a campaign encouraging locals to report foreigners violating visa rules or local customs. With immigration authorities empowered to act swiftly, Americans overstaying visas, operating remote businesses without permits, or engaging in online activism are finding themselves on a plane home. The message is clear. In 2025, even countries once considered American-friendly are drawing red lines. The Philippines is still open to visitors, but not to violations. Turkey's complicated political landscape in 2025 has made it a riskier place for Americans. With President Erdogan doubling down on nationalism and anti-Western rhetoric, the U.S.-Turkey relationship has reached new lows, and American citizens are increasingly feeling the heat. One of the biggest triggers for deportation is suspected support for Kurdish groups, especially the PKK, which is labeled a terrorist organization by Turkey. Even casual associations, like attending a cultural event or posting about Kurdish history, can land Americans in serious trouble. Political activism is another red flag. Americans attending protests or rallies, or even voicing opinions about Turkish domestic issues online, are being detained and deported. In some cases, travelers have had their phones searched at the airport and been denied entry for old tweets. Journalists, academics, and NGO workers are especially at risk. Many have been deported without formal charges, simply for their field of work. A group of exchange students from the U.S. was expelled in early 2025 for allegedly promoting dissent during classroom debates. Religious sensitivities also play a role. Misunderstandings around Islamic customs, attire, or behavior in mosques have triggered public backlash, and sometimes direct intervention by authorities. Though Turkey remains a popular travel destination, the risks for Americans are rising. In 2025, stepping out of line, even unknowingly, can get you sent back home with a warning not to return. In 2025, Pakistan has become significantly stricter with its visa and residency policies, especially toward Americans. While historically friendly to tourists and expats from all over the world, rising tensions between the U.S. and local political groups have made the environment tense. Several Americans have been deported for allegedly disrespecting religious customs, engaging in missionary work without approval, or making political statements critical of the government or military. Even social media posts made before arrival are now under scrutiny. In one notable case, an American aid worker was expelled for sharing a Facebook post that was seen as critical of Pakistan's blasphemy laws. In another, a freelance journalist was detained and deported for reporting on minority communities without government approval. Increased surveillance and public suspicion also play a role. Some citizens have reported Americans for minor cultural misunderstandings or suspicious activity, often resulting in swift deportations, and once removed, return visas are rarely granted. Even business travelers and remote workers are at risk. The government has tightened visa rules for freelancers and NGOs, and short-term visas are being revoked more frequently without explanation. Those overstaying even by a day can face detention and blacklisting. In 2025, Americans planning to visit Pakistan must tread carefully. One misstep, whether online or on the ground, could get them sent home with no chance of return. This one will shock you. The sunny, postcard-perfect paradise of the Bahamas has become one of the latest countries deporting Americans in 2025. Once a top vacation spot for U.S. citizens, this island nation is taking a stand against foreign misbehavior, and Americans are front and center. The shift began when local residents grew increasingly vocal about the disruptive behavior of some American tourists. Loud parties, environmental damage, disrespect toward Bahamian customs, and even illegal filming have triggered outrage. The government responded with a strict crackdown. Behavioral guidelines now govern public conduct, and breaking them can get you deported. Public intoxication, lewd behavior, and culturally offensive clothing or gestures are no longer tolerated. In one case, a group of Americans were deported after filming a music video on sacred grounds without permission. Social media has made things worse. Content creators looking for viral moments have crossed lines, and Bahamian officials are monitoring those posts. If they see something disrespectful or damaging to the country's image, it can lead to swift action. What was once a carefree Caribbean getaway is now enforcing strict rules, and Americans, once considered their best customers, are finding themselves on the wrong side of the law. The Bahamas may still be beautiful, but in 2025, disrespect it and you're gone. The relationship between China and the United States in 2025 has grown colder and more complex, and Americans who travel, live, or work in China are paying the price. With the aggressive expansion of China's anti-espionage law, U.S. citizens are being deported at record rates, often without being told what they did wrong. Teachers, digital nomads, and even tourists are being sent home for seemingly minor infractions. Filming a public market, having a book about Taiwan, or using a VPN can all spark investigations. One American YouTuber was detained for vlogging near a government building. Another was deported for reposting a news article deemed anti-China. Underground religious activity, human rights discussions, or simply having connections with banned organizations can land you in hot water. Even private messages or files saved in your cloud account can be enough for authorities to question your intent. In a high-profile case, a group of American students were deported for attending what they thought was a cultural event. Authorities claimed it was an illegal political gathering. Their phones were searched, their visas revoked, and they were banned from re-entry. China's increased digital surveillance means your online life can get you expelled, even if you haven't broken any visible law. In 2025, Americans in China are being treated with deep suspicion, and many are being shown the exit, sometimes without warning. In 2025, Russia has become a no-go zone for many Americans. The icy relationship between Washington and Moscow has turned even colder, creating a hostile environment for any U.S. passport holder. American journalists, students, and business professionals are being watched closely and increasingly deported for reasons that are vague at best. The Russian government has labeled several U.S.-based NGOs and media organizations as undesirable. Any connection to these entities, even by association or online support, can get you detained or booted out. English teachers and remote workers have also found themselves suddenly deported for alleged visa violations. Social media is under scrutiny. Sharing anything critical of the Russian government or sympathetic to Ukraine can trigger deportation proceedings. One U.S. student was removed from the country after posting a TikTok dancing near a government building with a banned flag in the background. Even unintentional offenses are now being treated as provocations. And it's not just officials doing the watching. Russian citizens are being encouraged to report foreigners who act suspicious or anti-state. That means one wrong word, one misinterpreted gesture, and your time in Russia is over. Whether you're visiting Moscow for a quick trip or staying long-term to work or study, Americans are no longer welcome with open arms. In fact, some are being shown the door without any explanation at all. In Russia, the message in 2025 is loud and clear. If you're American, you're already under suspicion. So, what do you think? Did any of these countries surprise you? Maybe you visited one, or even dreamed of moving there someday. But as the world shifts, so do the rules. And being American abroad in 2025 isn't as easy as it used to be. These deportations are more than just headlines. They're warnings. The passport power is fading, and global tolerance is wearing thin. Let us know in the comments, which country on this list shocked you the most? And don't forget, number 3 still has people talking. Like, share, and subscribe for more eye-opening videos like this.